Hello there, race fans, and welcome back to the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. We took a week off after we crowned our fifth unique Oval Series champion just 2 weeks ago, and now here we are again back at the Thompson Speedway to kick off a brand new season of late model racing here tonight. That said, of course, the Oval Series, same as it was last season, 101 lap or 101 mile late model races, with practicing opening at 9 p.m. Eastern on Monday nights, with qualifying at 10 p.m. Eastern, following by the race that you're just about to see here in a few minutes at 10:10 p.m. Along with that, the ASRC Road Series also runs on Monday nights with GT3 cars with no practice. The session starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern with 30 minutes of qualifying, and then either a 100-mile endurance race or two back-to-back 25-minute sprint races. There are a total of 6 of these double sprint race formats and 6 of the endurance formats for the 12-week season. And then on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, they have Dirt Pro late models. So if any of those sound interesting to you and you want to come out and come race with us, be sure to check out at ASRC Racing on Twitter or www.asrcracing.com. Only requirements to join are to be a clean and respectful racer, and considering we are opening up our first race of the season here tonight, there is still plenty of time for people to join and be competitive in the points standings. So, of course, that is www.asrcracing.com. So, that said, qualifying is just about in the books at this 1 kilometer long oval. I would say for the street stocks and for or not the street stocks, the late models, excuse me, and for our general schedule for this season, that Thompson is kind of an intermediate track. We definitely go to tracks that are a bit shorter, some as small as about a third of a mile in length, all the way up to 1 mile long. One of the tracks we're going to be seeing later this season, one that we have not been to since we've started broadcasting the Oval Series, is going to be the Phoenix Raceway, so that should definitely be a fun one. That said, qualifying is in the books, so how about we go take a look at our starting lineup presented by the Majors Garage and Sim Racer Hub. Starting out on the pole here tonight in that number 85 NTO machine is going to be the winner of our previous race at the Thompson Speedway, Mr. Brian Sabelski. To his outside in the number 93 Me entry is going to be League Admin Jason Gardner. Third place to the number 14 of Morelli Motorsports' own Nico Morelli. Fourth place going to be to a rookie driver here tonight, Zachary Nelson in that number 8 machine, making his first start of any ASRC series. Fifth place gonna go to our other league admin here in the number 27 Lernerville TV entry. Sixth place is going to go to the 51 of Eric Gahn for Dirtbag Racing. Seventh, going to be going to the 15 machine of Garrett Streets. Eighth place to the 70 of Jason Mong. Ninth place is gonna go to the number 24 entry of Corey Logan, a driver making their first start in the Oval Series for the first time in a couple of seasons. They had to take some time off of the iRacing.com platform, so it is definitely exciting to see them here tonight. And then finally, it does look like our last driver of the number 4, Brad Ringer, is not going to be making the field, so he will be scored in the final position. So, 9 drivers officially on the docket here tonight. 101 laps are going to be up on the board, and this will be the opening race of Season 8 of the ASRC Oval Series. Coming down around the backstretch here, I would imagine that tensions are going to be high for these drivers. The champion last season won with 7 wins, but almost every race had a different second place finisher, so everyone's going to be looking to put their names in the record books here tonight. The pace car is off, and we are going green flag racing here at the Thompson Speedway. Brian Sabelski off to a pretty good lead here, going to make his way up to the outside line, followed closely behind by Jason Gardner and Nico Morelli side by side into turn 3. Nico Morelli going to go way down low there, and it does look like he is going to make the pass on that number 93 entry. They still are side by side, but Nico does seem to have the advantage out of these corners, which is honestly a bit surprising to see, because generally when I talk to drivers down on the paddock, they say that Thompson is a high line track. That said, trouble as Jason Gardner is going to get up into the wall from contact with Nico Morelli. Definitely a pretty hefty amount of damage on that right front tire for the number 93 entry, but he is still very much in this race. There's not going to be any sort of caution, but he is slowing down a little bit down in the grass there, and it looks like he is going to be pulling that number 93 late model entry down onto pit lane. Brian Sabelski now having a bit of a handy lead given to him by the contact by the second and third place drivers, but sure enough, looking back in the second position is going to be rookie driver of Zachary Nelson, putting on a very impressive display on his first start here tonight. Zachary Nelson driving the number 8 Midwest paint scheme for the Midwest Club. Not quite sure where in the Midwest he is actually hailing from, but always good to see some club representation here on the iRacing.com platform. Back in third place is going to be the number 27 Lernerville TV entry for Johnny Bell, the driver out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The driver who puts on the most unorthodox fuel strategies that you can think of. And sure enough, I learned earlier tonight when I was competing in the road series that his rather unorthodox fuel strategies do not just apply here to the Oval Series. He does just as many ludicrous things over in the road series, and sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. Long close behind him, Nico Morelli in the number 14 machine, currently actually battling to try and get into the third position, which would be tying for his best finish here in the Oval Series since we switched to the late model stock car. Nico had a bit of difficulty last season. He always had a bit of misfortune ending up with that number 14 machine in places he doesn't necessarily want it to be, so I'd imagine that 14 might be one of the drivers more than anyone who is looking to try and put on a good show here this season. Currently duking it out here with Johnny Bell very close to the right rear quarter panel there, as Zachary Nelson is going to get a bit squirrely out of the corner and allow Bell and Morelli to catch up to him. It does definitely look like Nelson might be having a bit of issues in that number 8 machine. He is back up in the lead of this pack now, everyone all bunched up together under a blanket from that bit of checkup from the number 8 machine, which is sending Sabelski on even more hardy of a lead than he had before, now up to almost 4 seconds of a gap between P1 and P2 here tonight. Side by side going into turn 1, Bell and Streets nearly making contact there. The line around the Thompson Speedway, especially on the iRacing.com platform, is a line you don't really see on any other oval. And you can see these drivers side by side having a bit of difficulty trying to get their cars placed where they really want it to extract the most speed. Nico Morelli going to dive it way down low there, but no such luck for him to get any positions off of that move. The 21, or 27 here, still side by side with other drivers. Getting a little bit of a freight train going around his outside here. A little bit of contact between himself and I believe that was Morelli, going to knock him back a few positions. Now back to the 6th place here tonight. But we are only 14 laps into this event, believe it or not. There is still a long race left to go here tonight, race fans. Now side by side for the 14 and 51, Nico really trying to make the low line here work, almost getting those left side tires down onto the apron here tonight. Two very different approaches taken by these two drivers, but they seem fairly evenly paced. Morelli is going to be scored as the leader of this battle this time by, but Eric Gahn getting quite the run out of turn 4 here, and that's going to put him back in front of Morelli. Does look like the 51 had a little bit of sparks coming out of the back there, so he might have made contact with the outside wall going into 3, but that is not going to hold him up from leading this battle in that 51 BA Gaming Rules entry. Further up in the lead, a little bit of its own battle between Zachary Nelson and Garrett Streets here. These two drivers currently on the podium battling for the 2nd position here tonight. About a third of a second between these two drivers. We will have to see if they decide to try and battle it out for the 2nd position or work together to try and catch back up to Brian Zabelski, because it looks like no one has much to offer for our race leader in that NTO entry. Fun fact, Brian Zabelski has actually gotten more wins in this NTO paint scheme than the real-life NASCAR paint scheme that it is parrying. So, just goes to show how well Zabelski can wheel that number 85 machine around the track. Brian, of course, as you can see on the side of that car, is a Twitch streamer and is probably streaming his perspective of this race right now. So be sure to go check him out at twitch.tv/NihonTiger to watch his perspective of this race, and also watch him do a bit of modded Minecraft, another big thing that he does on his Twitch channel. Further back in the back, Johnny Bell has cycled back a few positions. It looked like he might have had a bit of trouble, now having a very sizable gap between himself and Jason Mong in that number 70 machine. Bell was up in the 5th position, now he's all the way back to 7th. And trailing not too far behind, our returning driver in that number 24 machine is going to be Corey Logan, making their return for the first time in a couple of seasons. Another Twitch streamer here in our league, so another driver, if you want to check out their perspective, be sure to go give a look-see to twitch.tv/CZZombiekilla or on YouTube at Coreyzilla Zombiekilla. Brian Zabelski's lead is only getting bigger with every lap that he drives around this speedway, now up to nearing 5 seconds between himself and 2nd place. Zabelski won the first 3 races of last season before Coy Hasselou and Anthony Nadell showed up and started stealing the show a little bit, so Zabelski here to put his name back on the leaderboard and try and claim his 4th Oval Series championship here with ASRC. And I'll tell you what, race fans, a 5-second gap in your opening race is a pretty good way to start things off, if I say so myself. Currently, the closest battle on the speedway here going to be between Garrett Streets and Zachary Nelson in the 15 and 8 machines respectively. Streets driving that unsponsored black and orange number 15. if I remember correctly, he told me that he had a bit of a joke name on his nameplate up there, but I don't quite remember what it is off the top of my head, and does not look like we can get a good enough camera angle to read what it is. But it does definitely not say Garrett Streets on the top of that race car, so we can only guess what might be getting picked up on the cameras that we can't see. Speaking of Garrett Streets, though, he actually is our biggest mover as we cross the 30 laps in the book here tonight. Garrett Streets up 4 positions from where he qualified and very comfortably sitting himself on the podium position with a almost 2-second gap between himself and the cars behind him. Everyone kind of spreading themselves out and starting to play with a little bit of patience here tonight. But that said, there is a 40% fuel limit on these late model stock cars. As it looks like Zachary Nelson is going to get a bit loose through the corner and allow Garrett Streets to catch back up. Streets is going to make the pass here down on the bottom. Side by side out of turn 4, and Nelson is actually going to be scored as the leader that time by. But 40% fuel limits on these late model stock cars, so on some of the tracks fuel will be a issue. On some of our smaller tracks on the schedule it will be fine. For example, Oxford Plains last season, that was actually why we decided specifically on 40% as our fuel limit. We wanted for there to be fuel strategy in the racing series, but not wanting to have to pit at the track with very awkward pit lanes in the form of Oxford Plains. So 40% is the limit that has been decided upon. Drivers are more than likely going to have to pit for fuel this race. This is one of the more intermediate tracks on the schedule, so it's pretty close on the threshold. If you saved enough, you could theoretically make it to the end, but I would imagine most of these drivers are not going to be taking that gamble. Of course, tracks later on in the season, like the USA International Speedway and the Phoenix Raceway, by far guaranteed tracks that drivers will need to be taking fuel. That said, the fuel window is probably not going to open until at least around lap 60 or so, so I would not imagine we will be seeing drivers taking their fuel stops anytime soon, but definitely something everyone has to be keeping in the back of their heads here tonight, race fans. 36 laps in the book now, and Sabelski is on an absolute roll here tonight. He is completely stolen the show, led every single lap in that number 85 machine. And now look at the timing and scoring, race fans. He is up to a 6.5 second lead, as Nico Morelli is going to be making the pass on Eric Gahn for the 4th position. I stand corrected, Gahn is going to be able to get the run out of the corner. It does look like Morelli has better corner entry speed, but he is going to get the pass done that time by. Definitely a bit of a gamble on which line you want to choose here. If you send it down on the low side, you're going to have a lower corner exit speed, but sometimes shortening the distance that little bit is all it takes to try and get a pass made, and it worked there for Nico Morelli, now scoring him in the 4th position. Back at the back of the field, damaged but certainly not out, Jason Gardner in that number 93 Me entry scored 8 laps down after that lap 1 contact. That said, you never know. Jason Gardner might secretly be Ricky Bobby and pull something off here to get the win here tonight. You never know. We're not even at the halfway point. That said, sounds like someone might have just had contact with the wall. I'm thinking that might have been the 8 car of Zachary Nelson just getting passed by Garrett Streets there, so I think there was a little bit of trouble for Nelson there. Nelson now going to be scored back in the third position, so still on the podium for this rookie driver, but probably not as good as he was wanting to be, holding on to that second position for most of the race so far. So we will have to keep an eye on this driver and see if he is able to pull anything off and get back up to P2. Speaking of drivers making passes, Corey Logan has caught up to Johnny Bell there, falling back a little bit further, but still trying to make some moves on that driver of that number 27 Lernerville TV entry. That said, Johnny Bell is known for his wild and wacky fuel strategies, and they have almost paid off for him a few times. Back at, I want to say, the Concord Speedway, yeah, that's it. Back at Concord last season, Johnny Bell was the only driver to not pit for fuel. He managed to stretch it out to the very end, and he actually ran out of fuel right after crossing the finish line, and it scored him a second place finish. So sometimes these borderline insane fuel strategies do work out for the driver of that number 27 machine. So I would not be surprised if he has something up his sleeve to try and improve his position tonight that is more than just raw pace. Currently looking at the closest battle on the speedway here. The 8 of Zachary Nelson trying to make the pass back on Garrett Streets. Not going to be successful with it that time by, but we're still not even halfway through this race, so he has plenty of time to try and make this position up. That said, he does have right rear tire damage. You could see when he was going into turn 1, so it does look like that driver smacked the wall and is probably how he lost the position in the first place. You can see the sheet metal caved in a little bit around the tire there. Thankfully, it does not look like it is making any sort of contact, so no risk of having a tire go down, but definitely not helping the aerodynamics of that number 8 late model stock car. Closely behind them is our lapped driver of Jason Gardner, having a bit of pace under the hood of that 93 despite the damage. He actually, last time by, set a faster lap time than most of the field except for the leader. So definitely still a very fast hot rod here tonight for that number 93, even if he is not on the lead lap anymore. But let's be honest here, are we really surprised? Jason Gardner is secretly Ricky Bobby after all, so it only makes sense that he's setting incredibly quick lap times even while 8 laps down. Speaking of lapped down now, Johnny Bell is going to be our new last driver on the lead lap, as Brian Zabelski has managed to get around the number 24 entry. That said, you can see Johnny Bell getting very closely followed behind by that 85 machine. He is probably also going to be putting another car a lap down here in just a few laps. Johnny Bell going to dive it down to the apron and allow that number 85 machine to go by. Of course, drivers here in ASRC pretty much always making a big point of showing respect to one another, and when they're lapped, they make a point of not holding up the race leaders, because after all, grid your reputation is the motto of this league. Looking at the new closest battle on the speedway between Garrett Streets and Zachary Nelson. Zachary going to get a bit tight on the corner and maybe make contact with the left rear quarter panel of Garrett Streets, but both drivers are still going, so if there was contact, it was relatively minor. Nelson really trying to get that position back now that we have crossed the halfway point. The clock is ticking for these drivers. And Nelson obviously looking to set a good impression on his first race here with the league. Wanting to show that even if he isn't one of the veterans, he has what it takes to potentially win a race here. Side by side out of turn 4. Streets is still going to be scored as the leader that time by, but Nelson gonna dive it down low in turns 1 and 2. Very narrowly making the pass. If he can hold on to this, he will be back into the second position. Streets is going to back off on corner entry there, making Nelson back into the second position. Garrett Streets, still our most improved driver here tonight, still up 4 positions from where he qualified, so definitely a very good run for the driver of that number 15 machine. And he is currently tying his best ever finish since we started racing the late model stocks. So definitely a heck of a run for that number 15, even if he did just lose a position. Trouble for the 93 though, it looks like he does have a bit more damage on that car. He is going to bring it down to pit lane. Whether he's bringing it down for fuel or bringing it down for repairs, we're not quite sure, but he is taking tires. Speaking of Jason, the other Jason is now on pit lane, as well as Johnny, not Johnny Bell. I'm not quite sure why it was scoring Johnny on the pit lane for a second there. Nico Morelli also down on pit lane, so that's 3 drivers now coming in for their fuel stops here tonight. Nice of them to leave the iRacing.com pace car idling here as drivers get their pit stops done with. You never know when the caution flag might come out. That said, I think that is a little bit of a risky move considering I just watched a race the other day at the real-life Riverhead Raceway, and the pace car's engine actually exploded, and they had to use a tow truck as the pace car for the remainder of the race, so maybe not the best idea to have the pace car's engine idling for almost an hour, but you know what? I'm not in charge of the iRacing.com platform, so more power to them. Ryan Sabelski, currently still our race leader, now up to an 11-second gap between himself and second place. Currently, 3 drivers have taken their fuel stops here tonight. Nico Morelli, Jason Mong, and Jason Gardner. Both drivers are trouble, I believe, for not quite sure who, actually. Someone just had a really hard wall impact, and I can't for the life of me tell who it was. Everyone's still going. There was no caution there. It might have been Nelson again, but I'm not quite sure. That said, another driver down on pit lane. Johnny Bell taking his fuel stop as well. Now gone. Streets, Nelson, Sabelski, our final drivers not to take fuel here tonight. 65 laps in the books, so they are going to probably start thinking about what their fuel strategy is going to be. Brian Zabelski in that number 85 seems to certainly be pretty carefree though. 11 seconds of a lead, and not really anything he has to worry about. A caution could spice things up a bit. 2/3 of the way through the race, and I would imagine Sabelski is really not hoping for one, wanting to use as much of this gap as he can for the remainder of the race. Garrett Streets, our next driver down on the pit lane here tonight. 3 drivers left that have not taken fuel at all. Nelson also down on pit lane, that makes it 2. Sabelski and Gone are last drivers not to pit. 67 laps in the books. Pretty much everyone is now a lap down from their pit stops, but Sabelski coming in will allow some drivers to get back on the lead lap, so it is not game over for any of these drivers, of course. Gone, still the only other driver to not take fuel, and Brian Zabelski actually getting pretty close to lapping this last driver on pace rather than on fuel strategy. Gone currently 20.1 seconds behind Sabelski, and the lap times around this track are only 21.3 seconds, so only about a second of difference between Sabelski and Gone. That said, Sabelski is going to take his fuel stop here on lap 69. That is pretty nice. Gone going to go around one more time and get the bonus point for having led a lap. And then I would imagine he will be taking his fuel stop as well. But Sabelski's pit has put Streets and Morelli back on the lead lap. So, several drivers back in contention here tonight as we cross lap 70. Gone has officially gotten the bonus points for having led at least one lap. So Sabelski and Gone, the only two drivers that will have received that bonus point so far. But that is always a goal. Every point counts here in this league, and sometimes that does play into drivers' fuel strategies, is trying to be the last person on the speedway to get that bonus point. So now that pit cycles have gone through, every driver except Gone has pit for fuel now. That will leave us with 4 drivers on the lead lap. I'm not sure if Mong or Nelson will be able to actually get back on the lead lap just from Gone pitting, but I could be mistaken by that. The 51 could be trying to stretch it out here to the end. It's a little, oh, well, I say that and now he's pitting. This is why I should keep my mouth shut, race fans. I say something and then something else happens. So, Gone down on pit lane, going to make Brian Sabelski our race leader once again, with a bit of a gap between himself and Streets, only about 2 seconds, followed by another 4 seconds by Morelli. So if these two drivers can get a bit of pace going, they could very potentially get into the lead here. That said, Sabelski's lap times are several tenths of a second faster than Streets, and you can see here on the timing and scoring, he is making ground with every single lap. Gone has finally pit for fuel, so that is going to put Mong back on the lead lap. So 6 drivers now on the lead lap here tonight. Johnny Bell would be the lucky dog should a caution come out. And I'll tell you what, race fans, sometimes we have seen some pretty wild things happen at the end of these races. I do believe we've had at least 2 races now where within the final 5 laps or so, the leader is wrecked. So you never know who's going to win it until the races are over with. But that said, 25 laps left to go here tonight. The clock is ticking for these drivers to make something happen. Currently now looking at the closest battle on the speedway here between Jason Mong, Zachary Nelson, and Eric Gone. All 3 of these cars are battling for position here. Currently, the leader of this little group is going to be the 70 of Mong for 4th place, but he's going to go up high, and Nelson is going to make the pass without a single care in the world. Jason Mong following closely behind, though, with Eric Gone tailing just behind. Eric going to try and go down low on corner exit, and that's actually going to work surprisingly well for him. These 2 drivers going side by side into turn 3. Jason Mong gonna drift it way up high yet again, and he has now fallen back to the back of this 3-car pack. But still, the closest cars on the speedway going to be Gone and Mong, separated by only half a second. 22 laps to go here tonight. Mong sending it really down low. Equal parts trying to catch up to Gone and Nelson, and also not wanting to get lapped by Brian Zabelski, who is just behind. Garrett Street still holding on to that 2nd place position, though, which would be his best ever finish in the late model stock here with Attrition if he manages to pull this off. 20 laps to go now, and a pretty comfortable gap between himself and Morelli, so unless a caution comes out, he is looking pretty good to come home in the podium. Gon and Nelson still battling it out back here in the middle of the pack. Nelson taking a bit of a higher line than Gon, but Gon cannot just seem to get the run off the corner. He needs to catch this number 8 machine. Still half a second of difference between these two drivers. And both are actually setting very similar lap times, only about a tenth of a difference between these two drivers, but Zachary Nelson is setting the faster times, so Gon is going to have a bit of difficulty catching him. 17 laps to go next time by for these late model stock drivers. Jason Mong officially down a lap yet again from Brian Zabelski, so only 5 cars left on the lead lap, and you can see there are some pretty considerable gaps between all of them. Zabelski working his way up to Gon and Nelson now. So these two drivers also going to have to start to worry about being lapped, which could be a make or break for them should a caution come out in these final 16 laps. Both drivers also starting to catch up to Corey Logan in that number 24 machine. Corey is going to go down low and let them both by. Not holding up either of them at all, so not really going to help Gon all that much trying to catch Nelson. There actually was a little bit of improvement of Gon's gap there, but it already has gone back to being about half a second between these two drivers. Johnny Bell does not look like the pit strategy is going to work out for him here tonight. Now back in the 7th position. He did take fuel already, so it looks like whatever strategy he is doing has been completed here tonight. Not the finish that Bell was hoping for. Brian Zabelski might be having a bit of tire fall off now. Street's now only 4.7 seconds behind him, which still is a pretty considerable gap. But Streets is making ground. Streets did set a faster lap that time by, so Streets actually is slowly but surely working to catch Zabelski. It's just a matter of if there is enough time for him to make up the deficit. 11 laps left to go here now. And Zabelski, of course, is coming up on more lap traffic, but that has not been an issue for him so far. Lap cars, of course, all pulling down off the racing line to let the leaders by, so we will have to see if they do it here again with 10 laps to go and a close battle for position. Zabelski sending it way high into the corners here and then cutting down, so definitely not running your traditional oval line, but it seems to be working for the driver, that number 85, because he is increasing his gap on Streets with 10 to go. Make that 9 to go now. The clock is ticking for these late model drivers, but unless something massive happens, I think we have seen just about the conclusion of this race. Currently looking at the closest battle on the speedway between Eric Gon and Zachary Nelson. Almost a full second of difference between them, but they are the two closest cars on the speedway still. Jason Gardner still down on pit lane with heavy damage on that late model stock car. Definitely a very unfortunate dry opening to the number 93 machine's season. But we do have 4 drop weeks, so that is exactly what it is designed for. Only the driver's best 8 finishes are calculated for the points championship. 6 laps to go now. Eric Gon has made up a little bit of ground on Nelson, but not very much, and Brian Zabelski still trailing just behind them. After all, nothing adds to a battle like pressure from behind of a lead lap car threatening to put you a lap down. That said, the big high five up in the air, 5 times left to go around the speedway for Brian Zabelski. Zabelski getting very close to passing Gon here to put him a lap down. Ultimately, not that laps mean anything in terms of points. You finish where you finish, regardless of what lap that is actually on. 4 more times around the speedway for our race leader, and that will be that. 6 seconds of difference between himself and Streets, not a single thing that this driver has to worry about. 3 laps to go now. Zabelski just looking to sail it home. He's led almost every lap this race, -4 when the pit cycles went through. Definitely a very dominant run that this number 85 driver is putting on. And honestly, it's well deserved. Zabelski was in an incredibly close battle for the championship last season, and it was quite literally all down to the championship race, and unfortunately, due to real life circumstances, he was not able to attend the race. So, white flag up in the air for Brian Zabelski, looking to try and bring home the first win of the season and see if he can't pave his way to a 4th Oval Series championship, starting right here at the Thompson Speedway. Brian Zabelski is your race winner here tonight. We will give everyone, of course, a couple of laps to cool down here before we try and give them all a little bit of an interview here tonight. But big props to the driver of that number 85 NTO entry of Brian Zabelski. Twitch.tv/Nihon Tiger. And Zabelski is going to burn it down for us, being the first winner of Season 8. Of course, a bit of a Polish victory lap out of that number 85 machine. We will give him just a few minutes. Of course, we can't dial him up for an interview while he's in the car driving. That would be a little bit uncomfortable, I think, for all parties involved. So we will give him just a second, and then we will see if we can't pick his brain just a little bit. Big win for the driver of the 85. We think that might be it. Nope, he's still good. He's still good to go. Thought maybe he might have burned out the engine a little bit there, but he is back on the track. Gonna bring that number 85 machine back around to the pit lane, and then hopefully we will be able to talk to him. We are dialing up our race winners here tonight. So far, none of them answering us, but hopefully we will hear from them here in just a second. We got Streets, we got Nicholas. If we don't get Sabelski here in a second, we might do this backwards. Alrighty, race fans, we're doing this backwards because Brian isn't here yet. Nico Umorelli, that's not how you say your name. My brain's going way too fast right now. You got a podium finish. What the heck? How are you feeling? I don't think he's there, race fans.
I'm here.
You are here. You finished on the podium.
I'm pretty damn happy. That's by far and away my best result here in the late models in this iteration of the Rookie Oval Series. So I didn't expect it. Thompson is a pretty tough track, and I glanced off the wall twice coming out of 4. So I definitely didn't have the car that I should have had to come on a podium, but I'm stoked, honestly.
It's great to have you up here for once. And I mean, this is Thompson we're talking about. If you don't have right rear damage, you're not doing it correctly. So I'd say you put on a pretty good run here tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And hopefully, in the future, as we go down through the season, I'll actually be able to put together some more of these performances instead of coming at the back more often like I have been.
Hey, part of it's luck, so don't be too hard on yourself. There were some things you were involved in last season that I don't think you could have avoided. So
Very, very true.
here's to season out 8 going better for you, though. Is there anyone you'd like to thank for getting that number 14 machine here on the podium?
Johnny for putting on the league, Jason for thinking of this iteration in this series, and Jason for not taking me back out when he perfectly could have after I put him in the wall early on accident.
Well, it's like I said, that's Thompson. I know I wrecked Jason here at least twice, so I'm sure he can't hold it against you.
Exactly.
But is there anything else you'd like to say before I kick you out of my booth?
Thank you for obviously broadcasting the stream. As always, you do a fantastic job, and we love having you here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming out.
Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Garrett Streets finishing P number 2. I believe that is your best finish here tonight since we switched to the late models. So, heck of a run. How are you feeling?
Pretty ecstatic. Didn't feel like I had a very good car, very good setup. I didn't have the speed in practice or qualifying, but luckily things during the race went my way and we kept it pretty clean. I felt bad after Jason and Nick got together there early. I kind of roughed up Jason a little bit, so I felt bad about that. But following Zach, just I could see him wearing out his tires, sliding around a little bit. So just being patient, trying to keep it clean. Strategy went my way and finished up P2.
Sometimes that's all it takes. There's more to racing than just your gut feeling, and sometimes going into races when you're sure you're going to do terribly is when you put on your best colors. Is there anyone you'd like to thank for getting this 15 machine here on the podium?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Johnny and Jason for putting this thing together. Jason for getting me into the ASRC. Also want to thank you for broadcasting. It really helps out the league a lot and makes it a lot bigger deal than it has been in the past. And I think it helps promote the league and everything. So I'd also like to send a quick shout out to my girlfriend, Morgan. Thanks for watching. And thanks for having us, Aiden.
Thanks for coming out. It's great getting to watch you all compete every week. Y'all put on a heck of a show. And you heard him here first, race fans. That was Garrett Streets, and I believe he said shout out to Morgan. So, Morgan, if you're out there, there's your shout out. And finally, Mr. Race winner Brian Sabelski. You won here last season, you won here again. How are you feeling?
Good.
I would hope so.
Pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a good situation. Car felt really good tonight. I don't know what setup change. I didn't have a setup, so I had to make one, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'll use the baseline and tweak it here or there a little bit. I didn't really change too much, but it was enough, and the car just was like good, and it was pretty much just a little bit of tire and fuel saving throughout, and just kind of walked away with it a little bit. So I know maybe it wasn't so exciting for everybody else, but yeah, it was good. It's kind of unfortunate that Jason was involved in that early incident too. He probably would have kept me a little more on my toes and all that. I think that also opened up quite a bit of a gap as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but this is a good start to your season. It's definitely got the wind in your sails. Do you think that you might be on board here for a fourth Oval Series champion?
Well, it's always too early to say that, but I mean, feels good so far. We'll see how the other 11 weeks shake out. Long way to go.
Ain't that the truth? And I'm excited for every moment of it. But is there anyone you'd like to thank for getting the W in this number 85 machine?
Just thanks to everybody who's here watching. Thanks to you for broadcasting, Jason, putting everything together. Just the usual. Thanks to everybody for being here, and we'll see. Gosh, where are we next week? Let me see here.
I believe we are at USA next week.
Okay, another very similar track, and then we got Martin. They're just lining up these short tracks with big long straights into 180-degree corners. So, yep, it should be pretty interesting these first couple weeks. This will be pretty quick races. You'll really need to keep on your toes and figure out a way to make some passes without causing a wreck.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what the rest of this season has to offer. And of course, I wish you the best of luck on your championship quest. I'm not
Absolutely,
allowed to say I'm rooting for you because that would be biased and wrong, but I'm rooting for
it
you.
would be. Thanks.
But I think that is just about all we got here tonight, race fans. You've heard from our top three finishers, Nico Morelli, Garrett Streets, Brian Sabelski. Very great showings for all of the drivers here involved tonight. Looking at the official standings, that said, rounding out things after our top three, we have Zachary Nelson, the rookie driver, in the fourth position in that number 8 machine. Fifth place going to go to Eric Gahn in the number 51. Sixth place to Jason Mong in the 70. Seventh place to the Lernerville TV of Johnny Bell. Eighth place to Corey Logan in the 24. And finally, rounding out the field here tonight because Brad Ringer did not make the show, is going to be the 93 of Jason Gardner. Next week, round 2 of the Oval Series is going to be taking us to the USA International Speedway. So, a bit of a longer track than this one, but very similar in layout with some long straights and narrow corners. So, just like Brian said, drivers are going to have to be on their toes next week. But that's all we got from here tonight at Thompson, Connecticut. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern for round 2. And of course, if you want to join the league and come compete in the Oval Series or any of the other series that ASRC has to offer, look up Attrition Sim Race Campus on the iRacing league directory, or look up at ASRC Racing on Twitter, or go to www.asrcracing.com. Have a good evening, race fans.